Welcome back to the PI Show, viewers. Before the break, we were talking about Facebook and tweeting and all this sort of stuff to do with the internet and the pitfalls and what we've got to be careful of in terms of looking after plaintiffs, Harry and Kathy.
But it's like a surveillance, isn't it, Tony?
It is surveillance.
It's surveillance.
Yeah. It's a good way of contradicting someone. They present on affidavit and to doctors that they've got problems with backs and necks and all sorts of things, and then you go on the Facebook to say that I'm swinging from trees and
travelling overseas,
climbing up on tall buildings at a single bound and all this sort of stuff, and it severely impacts on your case.
But it can be, I think, it can be illegally obtained. But also, is it discoverable documents if you're running a trial?
That's the problem with Victoria. We don't have a discipline where they have to disclose it.
If the insurer's got access to Facebook, you say they don't have to disclose it in discovery.
I think they can ambush you.
In discovery?
I think they can ambush you. I think they can just hold back and use it as a cross-examination tool. That's what I think they do, and that's what they did in this case of the young fellow that went to the States.
Yeah, but
they ambushed
but anyway, look, it's a growing phenomenon. But
how many times did you go to Supreme Court trying to argue that they've got to disclose all sorts of things? They just don't do it, and the judges haven't forced the insurance companies.
We haven't run the right case, Tony. The right case will get up in Victoria,
and I think it's probably one of the few jurisdictions in Australia where the insurers don't disclose their surveillance material beforehand.
Yeah,
and they should, because it does give.
It's trial by ambush. Yeah. Trial by ambush.
And also, it's sometimes a waste of the court's time, because some of the information or surveillance actually doesn't discredit the actual plaintiff. So
I agree. 80% of the time, it's of no value, and it does take an inordinate amount of court time.
And if it is that damaging, they should disclose it so that you do make an informed decision and get out.
And it can be put to doctors as well.
That's exactly right.
Harry, it might just be a case that the Supreme Court likes having plasma TV screens now, so I'm not sure as to why they want the surveillance.
Look, I think we haven't been creative enough to take the right case before a proper court and have a decision determined. So that's my personal view, but I think the right case would succeed in
I just think it's disappointing that we're in the 21st century and we still haven't got, even though we're all required to exchange and make sure that everything's on the table, the insurers can hold back. I think it's important that they give you everything and you can make an informed decision. Sit down your clients, take them through the material.
Well, the philosophy in most cases is full disclosure before a trial. That's a philosophy. Now, look, the other thing about the internet and Facebook, Twitter and all these things is increasingly you're seeing that court documents are being served. People sometimes evade service or aren't available.
Well, it's a form of substituted service, isn't it?
Yeah, well, instead of serving them personally, you're serving them electronically.
Yes.
But I think the young girl who was the centre of the St Kilda Football Club controversy, if people can still remember that, in Victoria, I think the court, the parties were before the court. The court wanted to inform her that there was going to be a hearing the next day and decided to inform her by her Twitter account, and she was an active user of Twitter.
Okay.
So I think they served her on Twitter and they said the court is to resume tomorrow and you're to be there if you want to defend this matter. I think the matter's been settled ultimately, so...
My understanding is, though, that one has to seek leave before the court to serve via internet mediums at this present time. I don't think that it's a form of service under the court rules.
No, that's right.
And I think it's only on special circumstances, again, as I said, when you have to seek leave, because you have to show, or one would have to demonstrate that there is an active user.
Yes.
Because it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to do it. And I'm not sure that it's going to progress in that way now, but it could in the future, that it'll become a part of the court procedures that internet mediums are allowed as
the way we're going with technology and
email, Facebook, you can serve by emails, serve on Facebook, serve by Twitter.
Are we going to have open courts, Harry?
Well, the Supreme Court in Victoria has set aside some money for a budget to broadcast on web TV in some shape or form proceedings. So this is a phenomena in Australia. The Supreme Court in Canada broadcasts their proceedings.
I think in America they do too, don't they?
And some courts in America, but not the Supreme Court in America. The Supreme Court judges are a bit cautious.
There's a lot of discussion about that and controversy still behind it. It hasn't come into light as yet. Obviously, they're trying to do that, and predominantly with criminal cases, but that will have a major impact on literally all the persons involved, witnesses, for the jurors.
I think it's educational. I like the idea of it being publicised.
There's positives and negatives.
Yeah, I'm not
to it.
sure.
I'm
Look,
not
about
convinced on
a
it
trial,
yet.
the trial itself, I think it has sort of adverse impact on, as you say, witnesses, the jury, the way matters are presented. If you're presenting for a wide audience rather than just the jury itself. So look. It might be more suitable for appeals and, where there's just judges alone hearing matters.
And definitely for the summary of cases. I mean, I do believe that the justice system needs to be more accessible to the people, but it has to be...
Once a judge has determined decisions, sentencing plus other things. So
I like the idea of having it publicised because at least people can see how they have to conduct themselves in a courtroom, Harry. You've never been in court before, for argument's sake.
But it's a daunting process, Tony.
It is, but at least you can see
but if
and you get a feel for it.
Well, look, the pitfall is if you believe that your neighbour's watching you on TV, you might
conduct yourself differently.
Yeah, fashion the evidence in a different way than if you don't believe the neighbour's watching. So,
well, Harry, if it's that important that they put you on TV in the first place, you better bet your bottom dollar you'll be on the front page of the news the next day anyway. So there's that side of it too, I think.
Yeah, possibly, but it's a work in progress, and look, the technology is becoming more accessible, cheaper, and there's a demand for people to
Just curiously,
see.
have you ever sat in the court in New York? You've been to New York a few times.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's theatrical.
What you see on TV is what you actually get in real life, because I sat in on a case, it was a personal injury case, it was fascinating.
Dare I say it's theatrical, Tony?
Very theatrical.
Yeah, they're very flamboyant, the American attorneys.
But what astounded me was when the judge walked in, no one bowed to the judge, and yet when the jury walked in, they bowed to the jury.
Wow.
And I saw a lawyer on the phone to a witness whilst the judge is on the bench. I could not believe that.
Well,
you can
perhaps they're not
believe
as
anything in
perhaps they're not as civilised in America, New York as they are in Victoria.
I was just taken aback. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, there's courtesy and respect, and maybe that's not quite there in New York. They're more robust and theatrical, I suppose. So, but I mean, you've seen judges confiscate phones in courts.
Yeah, they're actually very, very tough on that, and quite frankly, you're almost up for contempt if you're not careful.
The phone's going off in the middle of a court case. Well, look, I think we've got to go to sponsors break, and after the sponsors break, we're coming back to talk to Kathy in another capacity. She's going to wear another hat, if you like. She'll be talking to us about mailbag and questions from viewers. So keep tuned, and we'll see you after the break.